Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Jay Feezy. Welcome to Feezy's Media. This is That One Movie, episode 9. We're going to be discussing Supergirl. I just got through seeing it earlier today. What is this? June 27th, and it was released actually Thursday night, right? As typical movie releases go. I believe it was Thursday night, but I just got around to seeing it in IMAX, and I figured I'd discuss it while it's still fresh in my mind before I forget. I think I'm going to try to do that from now on. But with me on my panelists to discuss this movie, I have one Adam 12 and welcoming back Gio, the Movie Canon. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Great. Thanks for having us. Always great talking movies with you, Feezy, and Gio, and look forward for a super spoiler-filled discussion.
I see what you did there. Yeah, how you doing, Gio?
Yeah. Thank you, Feezy, for inviting me here again for another episode about movie discussions and stuff like that. This time being Supergirl. I did not get the Superman shirt memo, so sorry about that. But you guys are cool wearing yours. So, but yeah, I think we're ready. We're ready.
Yep. Give yourself some credit though. You are rocking a DC shirt. I know you mentioned that. You got the Batfleck, right?
Yes, the Batfleck shirt, exactly.
The Batfleck
Martha.
shirt. Yeah.
You can kind of see
representing.
Yeah. Why'd you say that name, Martha?
Why? All right. Well, let's jump right into it. Yeah. So this will be a spoiler discussion. So just FYI, that is going to be in the thumbnail. That isn't the thumbnail, but just a reminder: if you haven't seen it, feel free to go check it out at your leisure, and then come back and check this out. Or if you don't care about spoilers and you just want to hear our thoughts, first of all, thank you for coming through and watching this on your own time, and appreciate it. But yeah, if you're okay with spoilers, then we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. And let me go and get my my slides going here. All right, so Supergirl, director Craig Gillespie, like I said, came out, I guess technically worldwide was this the 25th, Thursday, June 25th, 2026. Craig Gillespie, like I mentioned, directed it. I wasn't too familiar, I'm not going to lie with him myself, so I had to look back in his film resume, and some of the ones that stood out to me that I have not yet seen is Cruella, I, Tonya, and Fright Night, to name some others, right? But those are the ones that I was aware of. Again, I haven't seen those. But yeah, in case for those of you who weren't familiar like I was, that's some of his work. Written by Anna, I'm going to mess this up, Noguera, Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster were the writers. Credits for writing in this film, and then cinematographers Rob Hardy, who's also done Mission Impossible, Fallout, and Ex Machina, which I was not aware those movies were done by him. And I wanted to look into this, and I wanted to dig on who was covering that aspect of it, because I'll cover here in some slides. But yeah, this is one of the pros of this movie, spoiler alert, that I really enjoyed, and I have plenty of examples to go over the cinematography in this movie, which I thought was awesome. But and to go over some of the cast here, of course, we got Amelia Alcock starring as Supergirl, the title role here herself. We have, Eve Reedley, who plays Ruthie. We have, of course, Jason Momoa here, who is playing Lobo. A lot of people were anticipating this one. You can kind of say he might have been fan casted, right? I think a lot of people before he got this role would have wanted to see Momoa as Lobo, right? And so here we go. So yeah, good or bad, he's Lobo. And then we also have Krem, which I'll show. He was the villain in this movie. Let me see. I think I have here we go. Krem was played by Matthias Schoenaerts. Hopefully, I apologize if I butchered your name. We'll just call him Matthias. And so, yeah, that was, of course, there's a lot of others, but those are more of the standout ones, the main players here. Pros and cons. I'm going to toss it to my panelists first, and I'm going to have them share their thoughts, and then I'll give mine afterwards, and we'll just kind of have an open discussion there and see what we have in common, see where we differ. But Adam, I know you had went to go see it the other day, I think Thursday night, I believe. But what are your thoughts on this, and pros and cons for Supergirl?
Well, first of all, two things. For everyone out there, make sure you hit like and subscribe to my man Feezy's page. Great channel. So like, subscribe this page. And just one point of clarification, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, they're credited as the original creators of Superman and the characters. but they've
okay.
long since
Gotcha.
passed away.
I see.
So,
Okay.
you know, I was a big fan of James Gunn's Superman that came out last year. Really liked that movie a lot. You know, I would give that an 8.5 to 9 on the out of 10 in my score. Really enjoyed James Gunn's take on that. Generally speaking, I really like. I'm a fan of James Gunn. I like his movies. I was looking forward to this. I was not wowed by the trailers, but I was coming in with a very much an open mind because I'm a James Gunn fan, and I really liked what he did, as I said, with Superman. But I also like what he's done with Peacemaker. So the things that I've seen so far of this reboot of the DC universe, I've been happy with because they've been fairly faithful to the comics that I know and loved reading from the 80s in particular, when they post Crisis on Infinite Earths, when they rebooted Superman. So we saw it, my daughter and I saw it Thursday night on the preview showing, and she definitely liked it a lot more than I did. You know, I think she gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I would give it a 5 out of 10. I was pretty disappointed. I think, first of all, I think Millie Alcock was very good. I think she's an excellent actress, and if you watch House of the Dragon, you know this show's a great show, but you really see how great her take was on Princess Rhaenyra in that role. So I wish the script gave her more to do in this, but she's a very good Supergirl, and she's a great actress. So I think that's a positive. I think I think the cast was fine. Jason Momoa is Jason Momoa. I mean, it's basically his usual shtick, and how well you like that, and how well you relate to the character of Lobo. He was a character that was introduced in like the post-crisis John Byrne era of the 1980s. I never really liked them. I never really disliked them. I was like Lobo, you know. So he was fine. I think anytime they, there was several scenes in this that were flashback scenes to Kara Zor-El, Supergirl's life on Krypton, and then in Argo City. And also, those were excellent. I really wish there were more scenes of that. I really liked, I think it's David Krumholtz played her father, Jor-El's brother. And I don't remember the name of the actress who played her mother. But I thought those scenes were really good. I think anytime that David Cornsweet, who's so charming as Superman, anytime he was on screen with Millie Alcock, great. I would have liked to have seen more Superman. I realize this is Supergirl's film, and that's fine. That's fine. I still would have liked to have seen more. I just wish the care and love and heart that was in the scenes from Krypton and Argo and with Superman was in the rest of the film. And I think my biggest criticism of the film, if you look at, and I just happened to rewatch it, I've seen Superman a few times. I rewatched it Thursday evening before we went to go see a late show of Supergirl. And I think that film, Superman, has got a lot of heart to it, and it's a fun movie to watch. Not a perfect movie, but it's a fun movie. And I didn't feel the same sense of joy and fun and heart in Supergirl. It just kind of,
For sure.
going through the motions. So, those are positive. I have certainly more to say. I definitely have a lot of weaknesses, but we'll kind of move on, and I'll talk about those a little bit more.
Okay. Gio, you saw this opening night, I believe Thursday night as well. Is that correct?
Yes, I saw it opening night as well, that Thursday night. And we're gonna stick to positives for now. So Millie Alcock was great as Supergirl. She was good casting for that, as Adam already mentioned. Her performance in House of the Dragon, and in this, she was great in that. That wasn't the issue at all in this movie, so I have no issues with her playing the character. The flashback scenes that also Adam mentioned actually were pretty good too as well. The better parts of the film, going back to Krypton and then Argo City and with the parents. And it took me a little while to figure out who the dad is, Kara's dad, because I was like, that guy, I know that guy. Where have I
The
seen
actor, you
this
mean?
actor? The actor, yes, the
Oh.
actor, David Krumholtz. And I was like, oh, he's Bernard, the elf from the Santa Claus.
Oh,
So,
I
so I was
didn't
like,
catch
oh,
that.
it
Is
is him.
that?
So that,
Oh man.
that was kind of cool. I mean, that that was cool. Um, so there's a lot more negatives in this movie actually, but the positives are things like that. Jason Momoa as Lobo, he was cool. He wasn't obviously in it that much, but we kind of expected him to be this character, and so, like you said, Feezy, he was kind of like fan cast, so it's perfect role for him. And I like seeing him whenever he's on screen. But this is not a Lobo movie, right? So there's some parts where Superman is in there, which I thought was cool. It was nice to see Superman in here, in a Supergirl movie. They actually do have him appear a few times in there,
Mhm.
without not taking away from Supergirl in her own movie. So I thought that was done very well. So I did like all that. Some of the action sequences, while they were a little all over the place, some of them were kind of cool, and there was some scenes that I did like that I was like, okay, uh, I'll be rooting for Kara Supergirl here. So I was rooting for her, and I think they did that well. But overall, just the way that they executed many things in this movie, which we'll get into the negatives in a bit. Um, so that's pretty much it. I think when it comes to any positives, at least that I can think of right now. Not absolutely terrible, not a complete train wreck like I've mentioned before on my show, and then even earlier on Más o Menos. But I think it definitely needed to be a little better than what it is. But again, we'll get into the negatives in a moment there. But yeah, those are my thoughts, at least for positives.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I agree on some points that you both made, and Adam, I know there's one point you made in particular, which I'll come back to if I remember. I did make a note of that, so hopefully I don't forget. But yeah, for me, the I think for me it'd be probably better if I went with the cons because this is tough. There were a lot of the amount of pros in this movie. There were more pros in this movie, but the few cons that there were, one in particular, just had more weight to it, right? If I were to give it a grade, and each of these points had a certain value, I think the one con would outweigh more than the others, unfortunately, even though there's like less of the cons, right? If that makes sense. So that being, I think, Gio, you mentioned this was and Adam, you touched on this too to some degree, but yeah, the story, it just felt it felt shallow, right? It just felt like there wasn't, speaking of weight, it didn't seem like there was a lot of depth to it, and it seemed
Mhm.
like there were scenes cut, which were unfortunate because I think that if that was the case, that ended up hurting the film and not allowing certain characters for the audience to kind of feel and see more from the characters and kind of relate to them, and or have more purpose, I guess, if that makes sense to them. And so it was yeah, I agree. I forget who said, I think it was Adam. Kind of felt like there were some points where the actors were just kind of going through the motions, and they were just kind of doing what was given to them. Millie Alcock, I agree, she did great. Gio, I think you were the one that mentioned that. Yeah, um she did a great job. But yeah, I think part of the movie overall was like the direction. And I get no shade to Craig Gillespie, but I did when I was going through his IMDb list of films, and take this as you will, but with each film, it also gives you the IMDb rating each of them. And there was a common trend there with his movies that are kind of hovering around like 6 or 7s, and this one per IMDb was 6.1. So again, take that as you will, but um so if anything, I guess that's like he's consistent, I guess, with his style. And so like I said, I'm not familiar with any of his other movies, so maybe there is something to that. But yeah, it just, I could tell it just didn't. It's weird because the characters were going through certain emotions, right? They were feeling certain things. For the most part, it was Kara or Supergirl, and you can kind of feel some of it there, but it wasn't as strong as like other movies portrayed it, right? It's just like well written, well established characters, and that was, aside from that, everything else I loved about the movie. And that was, well, I guess the other con was Ruthie, I guess Eve Ridley.
Mhm.
She just felt like she was always getting in trouble. It's just like no matter what, Supergirl was just telling her, just stay here, or like she said multiple times, stay here in different situations, and she was always getting in trouble. Part of it was Ruthie's character to want to go after Krem, the villain, right? So I get that. Other times it's just like it didn't make sense towards the end, where Supergirl pulled Ruthie away out of the ship at the end. I forget what planet they were on. But yeah, she took her further out into the desert, but she was still out in the wide open. And then Krem and his villains just went around and circled around her. I was like, okay, you couldn't take her like at least somewhere higher, like on a mountain or something, or it was just situations where like, she was in it. It just, that kind of got a little annoying. I'm like, it just kind of seemed like a device for her to get in some trouble, basically like certain predicaments, then have Supergirl savers. But the main thing was, like I agree, the story just, it was okay. That's the overall score, right? Was just okay, and it was mostly because of the story. But on the plus side, though, so we'll go ahead and I'll go into pros, and I'll toss it back to you guys. Everything else I think was a pro, was a plus. A lot of people were pointing out, the Gunnisms, or like the James Gunnism from either Superman or some Guardians of the Galaxy aspect. I didn't see too much of that. Yeah, there was music, and I guess some people could argue like the music might have been similar, like the vibe, but there wasn't really any needle drops. And yeah, there was music during fight scenes, but a lot of movies have that, so I wouldn't really point that in particular to James Gunn. I guess if you want to say the genre or type of music is that's selected, I guess sure. But that didn't really bother me. There was the cinematography, though. I'll just get into that. Yeah, the cinematography was great. I'm going to go through some of these photos here, and I picked up more when I was looking for scenes for this movie, for this discussion here. When I was going through photos to look for some examples. But yeah, again, cinematographer is Rob Hardy. Again, he did Mission Impossible Fallout, Ex Machina, and to be honest, I don't recall any outstanding significant moments from those movies. I just know, I really enjoyed both of those movies. But going back and seeing some of these shots here, I do recall, because I saw this in IMAX, and oh man, some of these were definitely great to see. So you have this one here where she just flies up into space. I think there's a scene where she wanted to just yell and get out frustration. And here's this shot on Krypton, I think, when they are establishing this like city in this bubble. Is this what is this?
Argo City.
Argo City.
Thank you. Yeah, Argo City. When she first uses her laser sight vision, which was a cool scene, right? She used it against those pirates, those tech pirates, I think they called them, when they shot that blue beam at her, and then she just kind of stopped it with her laser sight. Yeah, it's just really, really cool shots here. Like this one was really awesome. I love this shot here. I didn't realize when I first was watching the movie that Crypto was here on the right. I just noticed Kara here in the middle, and I looked on the right. I'm like, oh damn, that's Crypto right there. So that made me laugh. But yeah, man, the cinematography was really awesome. Here's that scene I was talking about when she goes up and she just screamed, which was kind of like a contrasting moment, right? Because she's screaming, but we don't hear it, right? Because in space there's no sound, right? So there's no sound in there. Well, out there, I should say, up there, but she's just yelling. You can tell her frustration here, just yelling. And this is right here. This one's another great shot where she just flies up from this pile of rubble, and you just see the silhouette. This was an awesome shot here when I forget this planet, with the two suns, the green and the yellow, which was awesome, by the way. I think that's a nice touch. Every time they went to a certain planet, they had the solar category, and they had the sun colors, so like red, yellow, yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and here's you got green and yellow, so that was cool. I like this whole contrast here. I didn't catch this at first, but how they were like both there at the same time when she first got there.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at this photo, cinematography is really awesome. I really enjoyed that. The fight scenes were pretty cool. Jason Momoa did a good job. Although, they're still somewhat hollow, but it was still cool to see him in there. I like his old Bass-itch sayings. I went into this not knowing anything about Supergirl other than like the familiarity and like obvious that she's also Kryptonian. She's Kal-El's cousin, but I didn't read DC comics at all. I wasn't familiar, hence why Adam, clarified the Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, so how not a fan I am of DC comics in general. I didn't even catch that. So yeah, I'm not gonna even claim to be a comics head at all. Well, a DC comics head, I should say. I was more in the Marvel aspect of the 90s generation and later on. But so yeah, I came into this not knowing anything and open-minded, right? Not having any thoughts or expectations on what this was supposed to be, and I just knew it was Supergirl, and I went from there. But yeah, so the quantity of pros outweighed, I should say there were more than the cons, but the cons unfortunately outweighed the pros, as far as, again, like the weight that they carried with them. And so that ultimately just it just brought my I guess my score, or my take on the movie. And I think I agree with the audience, the Rotten Tomato audience score, about 75%, so like around 70s ish is what I would give. I don't know the exact number, but yeah, I think that's I would agree with that. But yeah, those were most of my pros there. Gio, we'll throw it back to you. What were your pros of the movie here?
Oh, some more pros.
Oh, sorry, your cons. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, the cons.
Pros. Yeah, the cons. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Cons.
Yeah, the cons. I just think that the writing was kind of weak. It was just kind of like a basic story with some like basic dialogue. I know you mentioned that there's some scenes that seem very James Gunn's-y. With action sequences and the type of music. Yeah, it kind of did remind me. It did remind me of Guardians of the Galaxy and James Gunn. Just movies in general. So it kind of reminded me of that. And I was like, it looks very kind of Guardians of the Galaxy for me. And there's some sequences that also reminded me of Captain Marvel. And even Kick-Ass, when there's some action sequences.
Yeah.
And they play like a little catchy song, whatever, while the action is happening. But even outside of that, I feel like there were some scenes that I couldn't really see because of the way that it was kind of shot and edited. So it was kind of hard to tell. Sometimes, not all the time, but there were some times that was like, I don't even know what's happening. So I thought that was kind of weak there. The main villain seemed kind of like almost like a sidekick to me. Is like, I don't know, like they did show him, they did show him a few times that he seems kind of powerful, but obviously not enough that he wouldn't necessarily be able to take on Supergirl unless there's some other things going on with her, which happens a lot in this movie. That she's she's either not by the like that planet that like this planet here, that's when she arrives at that planet, that's when the green sun is rising and stuff like that. So she was basically like dying there for like the whole day, and so that affected her, and just some other things that she's not around the yellow sun, so that's why she's not as powerful as we normally see her. So I kind of thought the villain was kind of lackluster, so that would be kind of a negative there. Let's see.
I agree with that. That's another thing I didn't point out, but yeah, you're right. I agree that the villain they made him. I think even one of the other girls even said like he has like the strength of 1,000 men, one of those tech pirates. So they weren't worried, but yeah, we never really got to see that. Yeah, he didn't really do too much. So yeah, I agree with that. That's another comment I guess I would add.
Well, the villain had no motivation because he just spent the time going like this. I mean, like it's like he was trying to like do some like. I guess he's supposed to be a pirate. Is that like really leaned into it? It just like it was like a very Mad Max, Furiosa type of.
Yeah.
Well, this movie owes a huge debt to Mad Max and Furiosa and those films, but he was like the Mad Max villain.
Mustache twirling villain, generic villain, basic villain.
Yeah.
And there was no depth to it. And I don't know. I thought the story would be stronger than, trying to get back to. That's a spoiler. This is a spoiler discussion. So
it is. Yeah.
Crypto. Going back to crypto and stuff like that. I guess that's the motivation for her, right, for the movie. But
Right.
I thought it could have been something better when it comes to the story. I don't know if that's what's in the novel or in the comic. I don't know if that's what happens, but I know because
Yes.
I did talk to Brick, so that is part of it in the story.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
They
Oh, it
changed,
is.
but they changed some of the graphic novel. But that's basically the driving force is that
Oh,
he's
okay,
was
okay.
crypto.
Oh, okay,
Mm.
but I mean, like I said, I don't know. I mean, I guess that wouldn't have worked with me anyways, either if it's a graphic novel, but for a whole movie out of it, um, I don't know. I thought it should have been something else, maybe adapted to something else. I guess if that was actually part of the original storyline anyway. But um, so I don't know. I just thought there should have been more for the story itself, a little bit more compelling, a little bit more interesting, and it kind of was like I mentioned a few times. It was kind of basic, kind of
Yeah.
forgettable.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I agree with a lot of those points. Like yeah, like I mentioned the story, and but I mean yeah, she did have a motivation, right? Like you said, it was crypto. That was that the main device there for her to. Yeah. I'll come back to that. Go ahead, Adam. What about you? What are your cons on the movie?
Well, you certainly let's start with the villain there, Krem, who as we just talked about, he just spent the whole movie making grunting noises.
Mm.
I think you mentioned he was like a sidekick. He wasn't just like a sidekick. He was like the guy who's like one brief scene that they have guard the heroes and the heroes trick him to get out of the jail type, villain.
Gets
He's
keeps
like
getting demoted even more.
yeah, I mean, this guy is definitely up there as one of the worst villains in comic book filmdom history that I've seen. Um, so I think that was a major weakness. I think the music was terrible.
Hmm.
Now this film apparently went through 3 different composers.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know why, but it did. I don't think they
Mm.
nailed the music to this, either orchestral, and I think there is a needle drop at the end there, a cover of Jimmy Eats World's The Middle. It just
Oh
did
yeah.
not that did not
Oh,
land for me.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
I like, they had a whole marketing campaign in the trailers with Blondie's Call Me, which
Yeah.
is a great song. And they didn't play it once in the movie. Why?
Oh yeah.
Like that makes no sense to me. Um, and it's surprising because I do think that James Gunn, and I know he didn't direct this, but I mean, he's the head of the studio. His fingerprints are all over this. He's really good with the needle drops. The Peacemaker, certainly the Guardians of the Galaxy films, like great soundtracks. Even Superman, there's like a great use of Iggy Pop's Punk Rocker at the end of the film. It's a great song. I was actually just happy to be on my playlist today when I was driving around for work. So I don't know. To me, the music did not land.
Hmm.
And I think music is a crucial part of movies. And, you showed Feezy some, I think you're right, some really beautiful scenes and cinematography. But if you don't have the great music, it doesn't pack the same emotional punch. So I think that was a huge problem with this film. We talked about the script. I think this is a very weak, just a weak story. Like you guys were saying, this, the idea of her kind of, I don't think this is the best introduction to her character.
Mhm.
I know we got
Right.
the little tease of her being, drunk, and and saying, what did she say to Clark in the end of Superman? Like, see you later, bitch, or something like that.
Yeah.
So you got a little preview it, but I didn't. That didn't necessarily say this is she's gonna be a completely depressed, dark film. And the Supergirl, and I understand this graphic novel is kind of she's in a dark place. Maybe that would have been a storyline for a second Supergirl film or a third
Hmm.
Supergirl film. But I think your first film and the character that I'm used to is a more bubbly, upbeat
Hmm.
character. and I think in this universe that they're trying to show, I think that would have been a better way to get to know Kara Zor-El. The I think one of the other major negatives on this is, and this is mentioned I think by a couple people on Gio's show last night, is Supergirl, you want to try to get young people to be into this, and I think the whole subplot of like trafficking women for to use them to birth men, it was very like if you remember season 2 or 3 of Game of Thrones, where Gilly was from, and that guy, if you watch Game of Thrones, spoiler alert for that, beyond the Craster's Keep Beyond the Wall, where basically he would do that. He would, if there weren't, he would kill the kids. This is very much like that. And like, I don't know if this is the best. I'm not saying like comic book films need to just be for kids or young people. Not at all. But I'm just not, if I have like now my daughter's 18, so, she'll watch whatever. I don't have an issue with that. But, if I had a 10-year-old, and I'd want to bring a 10-year-old to see a Supergirl film, this is not, I don't know if this is the type of film that I could see a 10-year-old being into. Superman was, this was not. But like I said, the biggest crime that this film has is that it just for me, it wasn't a fun film. There wasn't joy in it. And like Superman had, this didn't have it. And I think it should have. This isn't The Dark Knight. This isn't Matt Reeves' The Batman, which is a darker tone. That's appropriate for those films. This should have been a more lighthearted film. Not silly, slapstick, but a little more lighthearted. But the one thing I will say is, there's been a lot of hyperbole online, I think, among some YouTube influencers, that this is the worst comic book movie ever.
Oh,
no, it's not. No. It's not even close. It's not a great film, but it's not the worst comic book movie ever. And I think there's been a lot of unfair shots at Millie Alcock that, just kind of ridiculous. But, it's not a bad film. It's just not a great film. I'm not even sure it's not even a good film, but it's not a terrible film. It's, as the kids say, it's mid.
It's mid.
Yeah, I know we were talking, before we started recording that, Adam, you and I were chatting a little bit. And, when I was watching it, I like I said, I try to go in with an open mind. I try to not let any positive or negative biases or takes kind of affect my judgment. I try to go in. I mean, sometimes it's harder than others, but when I was watching this, and I was like, this isn't as bad as people, from what I heard some people saying. It's not that bad at all. And you're right. There's always usually some hyperbole from certain moviegoers, right, and certain viewers, and it always baffles me. It's just like to some people, there's only good or bad. There's only like 10%. I won't go to 0. I'll say 10% or 90%, right? It's just there's no in between. Right. Yeah, it's like they can't. It's okay to like certain aspects of a movie and not like others, right? It's like it doesn't have to be black or white. It's just always baffles me, or like, and I don't know if they're just doing it just to make it simple, just because you don't have to put that much thought in it. You can just say it's trash, it sucks, and it goes for anything in general, not just movies, right? Just like anything in general. It's like there can be an in between. There can be a silver lining. There can be certain aspects that worked out and others that didn't. Just like we're discussing here, right? We have pros and cons. But yeah, no, I agree, Adam. It's just like, and I felt the same with Morbius, Madam Web. Yeah, we hear it all the time. I know we joke on it too, and I brought this up in multiple discussions. Like, oh man, that movie's so horrible. But I mean, I still like certain aspects of those movies. They weren't terrible. I mean, yeah, they weren't the best, but right. And I think that's consensus. It's just certain things I can find in movies. There's certain there's some good aspects of certain things of all of media, and that's how I try to go in and see when I go and either view or watch or with any type of art form. There's I try to see some of the good aspects in those in that media that someone created, right? And so it's not always the best. There are some that stand out ahead of others, but that's what makes them great, right? As opposed to like just good or okay or mid.
There, there's
Yeah,
films like it just with characters that you love. You know, like I think back when I was a kid, and I love, to me, Christopher Reeve Superman is the GOAT. And but Superman 3 and particularly Superman 4, The Quest for Peace,
yeah,
they're not good films. However, I have nostalgia of going to those films with my dad and seeing them. And there's still things that, like, even like the terrible things in them. In Superman 4, the special effects are awful because they ran out of money. And you know, there's like a lot of scenes that were cut out of the film. I still have, you know, nostalgia that even it's goofy. You know, I know like Gio, I know is a big fan of Batman and Robin. I'm getting the Batman and Robin George Clooney figure. It's coming soon. I don't really think that's a good film, but I definitely get the nostalgia from it. I mean, I'm, you know, even that, I saw that with my dad, and, you know, if the nostalgia were like walking out, like, that wasn't so good, but we still, I've seen it a few times since. You know, sometimes you want to watch because you love that character, and even if you're like, you don't really like it, there's something about it that you know, you just enjoy. It gets a warm feeling to you, and so yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So, Adam, you touched on one aspect that I did want to discuss, you know, with both of you and go kind of deeper into discussion on. So I want to give my thoughts on it, but that is, you know, I was hearing the same thing too before I went to go see this. And I was also on Figures Talk with you yesterday, but the 26th on the Movie Canon channel. You know, let's plug for you. I'll have that link in the description below. But and some people mentioned it there, but I also heard it on and read the comments on other platforms as well. Is that, you know, this isn't a lighthearted, you know, kind of feel good movie. It's kind of more. It has a darker tone overall, right? And that was, I think, one of the biggest, to kind of sum it up, that's the biggest difference between Superman, the James Gunn Cornsworth Superman, and this one. And I think I'm pretty, well, I know that, I want to say I know that's intentional, but I obviously I wasn't there. But based on what James Gunn had said in a quote, I think, let's see here. There was a quote. Did I write that down? Oh crap! I don't think I did. But he did. He basically, to paraphrase James Gunn, he did say that the intention of this movie was to show the contrast between the two characters. Yes, Superman's supposed to be more lighthearted, the good-natured Kryptonian, whereas Supergirl here, she was the opposite, right? She's not like Clark, and she even mentions a few times in this movie that was the case. And so, taking a step back. Adam, you brought up, I think it was you that brought up the end of Superman, you know, where they introduced Kara, and that was kind of already setting up the tone for her and how she was going to be. She came in drunk, and I think he even said, you know, she goes to planets with red suns to get drunk. I think that was mentioned in there, something like that, and she just seemed like she was stumbling in, and that kind of already set the tone for her character. So we got an idea of that, and then also when we got the trailer for this movie for Supergirl, you know, that kind of showed it even more, which parts of it ended up being the opening scene for this movie. So, and even if you didn't see Superman and you missed that end credit where they introduced Supergirl, how this opens already kind of sets the tone for the movie, right? You see Crypto, and he's just walking through garbage, and I don't know if I have that photo here, but there's bottles everywhere, and she's just, you can tell that she's just not really caring about life right now. She's just partying it up, and she just could care less. And I think that just sets the tone for the rest of the movie, and which is what they intended, it seems like, because that was the theme throughout, right? She just didn't really care. She just she was just trying to do her thing, right? And a lot of that, and this was discussed also prior to this movie coming out, and some people have pointed it out, and I think I would also agree with them when we had this discussion, is that, you know, she was obviously still on Krypton when it was destroyed, right? We see here how that happened, how that played out. Her parents ended up sending her out because we find out that kryptonite was infecting everybody like a plague or something, like an illness. Everyone was getting sick, so she was there. She witnessed that. She had to say goodbye to her parents. Whereas Clark, he left when he was a baby, so he wasn't exposed to any of that. He is older, right? He's the older cousin. So she has that in her memory, and she lives with that. And she's, she was old enough to remember and see all that. So she's obviously, that affects her emotionally, right? She's living with that. And I think we see this throughout the movie in her grieving, right? She becomes basically an alcoholic, right? She goes to these red planets, like she said, to drink. And we've seen this multiple times. There's a photo here. Like I said, there's empty bottles over the floor, and she's dealing with that. That's how she's quote unquote grieving over her loss and being isolated from everything else. She only has Clark, but Clark's again the opposite of her. She only has alcohol and her dog. And so they do a little, there's a little montage there where they show moments with her and Crypto. And so this is not said in here, but I think Crypto is one of her last memories, or just her last her last what's the word I'm looking for?
Her last connection to life on
thank you.
Argo City.
Yes, yeah. And so, and they also showed how she found Crypto. He was just there rumbling through garbage, I guess, and he came up to her
at her mom's funeral. So
yeah, exactly.
At a
she had
vulnerable time in her life, emotionally vulnerable time.
Yeah, so I do like that. I did like that aspect of the movie, right, where they made her. Whereas, so I kind of, this came to me when I was kind of putting together my notes, where for DC, you have Superman, right? Again, is like the quote unquote I don't want to say all American, but that's just the closest for lack of a better term. But he's like the goody good person, right? In Marvel, I would equate him to Captain America, as we know him like in the MCU, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like they both have similar type of characteristics as far as like wanting to help people and being that iconic symbol of hope. Whereas Supergirl, I would relate her, and there might be another character that might work out better in Marvel, but for Marvel, I think it might be more similar to U.S. Agent, right? If you remember U.S. Agent in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the show, where he temporarily became Captain America because Cap was gone, and so that
John Walker.
I forget the. Yes, thank you, John Walker. Yeah, there was a scene where he was in the military, ex-military. They made him Captain America to be a symbol because he was, a military. He was in the military, and so there's that scene where I forgot what the villains in that movie. I'm kind of going off memory here, so apologies. But they killed his partner, and he just in that moment got pissed off, and he would just instantly wanted revenge. He chased that guy down, and if you guys remember, he just spoilers. Mm-hmm. He just murdered that guy with his shield out in public, and it's just like an iconic scene because he gets up and there's just blood on Captain America's shield because he just basically like I'm assuming he bashed this guy's head in or whatever with his shield, right? And so, but I like that show as well. But that to me was an interesting a character choice because with Supergirl and him, we're seeing what happens when we get quote unquote average people, right? Average guy, girl, and you give them abilities, right? They make them more relatable, right? She's grieving the loss of something, or in her case, a planet, like someone else would grieve a loss of a loved one, right? I mean, I'm sure we've either experienced or seen people who use alcohol as a way to forget certain things. In addition to that, we can kind of get an idea where, she gets to Earth and then her powers kick in. Clark's like, hey, your powers are going to kick in now. Then it cuts to a scene where she just starts hearing everything. And then I presume the intent was to make it seem like it was too much for her. And then she then puts on her headphones, and I have that, this kind of plays into this scene. And so I think that was another kind of, another moment of like a symbolism there to like how she wants to just drown everything out, right? She just puts on her headphones and she just starts playing music. And then that's iconic because later on, we see her, she's always wearing headphones. She's always playing some sort of music and she's just kind of vibing and jamming. I think that's just a way, again, another way for her to kind of tune everything out and just kind of be by herself, isolate herself and just kind of her way to deal with it, right? Just to kind of block everything out in addition to the alcohol. And so I bring all that up to say that, I think that was their idea, right? This is meant to be not your lighthearted, good-natured super person like Superman is. She's a different person. She's in contrast to him, and she's just dealing with grief a different way. Whereas Clark, he really doesn't have any grief I mean, well, I guess if you want to say his parents, but he only knew him through like, you know, those recordings, right? He didn't get to meet him in person. And so you can take that as you want if you want to say that that's still enough for him. But you know, again, yeah, she was older. Well, not well, she was alive, I should say. More, she was alive more on that planet than Clark was, and so yeah, it all made sense to me. That's all to say. It all made sense to me why she was like this and why the film was darker. Um, she's not a hero. She said that. I think she also mentioned that herself, right? They're just, he sees, one of her quotes is like, Clark sees the good in people and I see the truth, right? And that kind of just shows, again, it adds to her character and how she was. She's, quote, more realistic, I guess you can say. She's not a bad person, but she also doesn't really care. She's all looking for herself because, you know, we see her, she wants to save certain people. She helps Ruthie in the beginning by going after that guy because he stole her sword. And so she cares to some degree, but she's not a complete ass, but, you know, there's just very minimal, right? Just very minimal that she's wants to do or even cares to do. And so and she struggles, right? She's struggling to be, I guess, a good person overall. She's trying to do what she can, but at the same time, again, she's just grieving. So I'll pause there. I'll get your guys' thoughts on that. I know it was a lot. I have a few more, but I don't want to block your guys' thoughts on that one. But we'll go to Gio, or we'll go to Gio. Any thoughts on anything you want to add to that?
I don't know. Like I said, it was just like I didn't have very high expectations of this movie just going in. So, you know, when I watched it, like I said, I just kind of felt like I already seen this film. So that's why I kind of brought my enjoyment of it a bit, you know, down that it normally would be, I would guess. So, like I said, I don't think it's an absolute terrible movie. I know there's like what you guys mentioned about social media. Some YouTubers and reviewers are, I guess, now saying that it's like the worst comic book movie ever, and definitely it's definitely not that. I know they kind of like try to like get some negative reviews or negative reaction to movies and put like a hook when it comes to a headline of a video so that people go and click on it like, oh, this YouTuber is really hating this movie. Let's see why are they hating it so much, and it kind of like helps with clicks and stuff like that. So I think that's what some people exaggerate even more so. They'll put the worst comic book movie ever made in the headline, and then you go in like, oh, why? Let me go in there and see why or whatever. It definitely wasn't this. Like I said, when it comes to I didn't ultimately recommend this on my show or in my grading system that I have for film reviews and stuff like that. But I think it's good enough for you to stream it at home. You know, like if you weren't gonna spend a lot of money, if you don't have one of those memberships like I mentioned on my show yesterday, spending like a lot of money to go and watch this. I don't think it was good for you to do that. But again, that's all your opinion, you know, your choice. So this is just my opinion and other people's opinions.
But as far as her, like, how the overall theme of the movie and kind of having more darker tone and just her not being like the hero type, like Superman or Clark. What were your takes on that?
I mean, that's kind of what I was expecting because what they mentioned in the what they showed in Superman. Yeah. So okay. I mean, for that, I mean, I didn't really have an issue with that. I'm talking about like the other stuff, just the execution of that movie with that story, with that character, with what's going on with that character. I don't, you know, that didn't even really. That's not really the issue for me. That wasn't a negative for me.
I see. Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, I didn't even bring that up because to me it's like, okay, well, they kind of set that up in the last movie, but
I agree. Yep. Adam, anything you want to add to that after any thoughts on what I was saying? Go ahead.
I think your analysis is 100% dead on. They clearly were trying to show a Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, who went through an unbelievable trauma, is suffering from serious depression and has become an alcoholic and has an addiction issue, to deal with that and to mentally survive. But I think they didn't quite get the execution of that storyline right. It was the execution of it that, Man of Steel, there's a great scene, I think you're right about putting on the headphones to drown out. There's a great scene in Man of Steel where they show a flashback to a young Clark. He's in elementary school or middle school, and he hears all these noises, and he locks himself in the closet. And the teacher has to call Martha Kent, his mom, to come get him. And she teaches him to try to focus on the sound of her voice. In that scene, they really did a great job of showing. And there's there are other scenes in that where he's come to terms with his powers. And this film, it's weird because this storyline, I think, would have been appropriate for the Snyderverse and the darker tone that they had in those films, but based on how the universe they seem to be creating with Superman, I don't, I understand where they're going through, but I guess I reject the creative choices they made, because to me, in the universe of David Cornswood's Superman that they've started, I think a better take would have been to make Supergirl more like Ms. Marvel in her TV show, or The Marvels, which in my view, she was the best thing about The Marvels. I didn't think that was a very good film, but she was great in that. Her character, which was such a surprise to me, I never read that comic. It's a newer comic. I wasn't really familiar. I didn't think I'd like the character. And then when I saw that show, I'm like, wow, I like this show. And I liked her in that movie. And I do hope they bring her, because that movie didn't do well, but I do hope they bring her character back, because she, the actress, just brought a lot of enthusiasm and joy to that role. And I think traditionally, how I've viewed, except for the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, where she ends up sacrificing herself for the fate of the multiverse, she, for the most part, there've been, it's not all of them, but for the most part, she was kind of like that, almost a Ms. Marvel type, like bubbly and joyful, and not this darker tone that, and I understand it's more like that in this Tom King graphic novel, which is a few years old. Not that old, but a couple years old. I just fundamentally reject this creative decision that they made. But they decided to do that. And, I think Malia Alcock did the best she could. But it just wasn't... I didn't think the execution was as good as it needed to be. And I think there's a lot... I really think there's probably a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor in this film. And this movie clocked in like an hour and 45 minutes or something.
Yeah.
So
that was weird,
which is
too.
kind of I have a feeling there's a lot more on Argo City that we didn't see. Maybe more with the villain. Maybe there's some, that has more of his backstory and not just him, grimacing around. But yeah, I know what they're trying to do with the contrast, and that's fine. I just don't think it was executed well.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, thank you for actually bringing that up, because I do actually have a follow-up question I wanted to ask you, and Gio too. I guess you can chime in on this also. But before I get to that, you reminded me of another thing when you had mentioned about that scene. I vaguely remember that in Man of Steel about Kent coming to help Clark with the noise situation he was having. So part of that quote that I was paraphrasing earlier from James Gunn, one of the things he did include in that was that Clark was raised by loving parents, right? They weren't his actual parents, but when he landed on Earth, right, he was raised by loving parents. And then again, Kara, she only had her parents until what she was, I think they said like 14 is what I had read, somewhere more or less. But yeah, after that, she just was on her own. And I guess she was living on Earth for a little bit, and then she left to go quote unquote celebrate her birthday. That's another thing, right? Clark thought she was, or Superman thought she was just gone celebrating her birthday. It was her birthday, but it seemed like she was gone for a while, right? And so Clark didn't want to impede. He was just letting her do his thing. And he was even wondering and calling in and having messages on there on her whatever communication device it was. And I meant to bring up this picture earlier too. I noticed also this is they did a good job of. I presume this was intentional too. A lot of the movie, like Adam and Gio, you kind of already pointed out, it was darker, and they did a lot of scenes where she was out on her own and kind of doing her thing. It were darker, but when she went to Earth and she landed, where Clark was, as soon as the ship opened, everything just got all bright, and him was just kind of like this aura around him, and he had like we can immediately see like the contrast in the attitude, and so I want to think that was intentional, right? I mean, granted, he lives like in up north in the North Pole, so it's all white there anyways, but I want to say that was intentional to show that just that contrast here. And I put these photos here next to each other, kind of emphasize that. But yeah, that was gonna go back to what I was just touching on about the contrast between the two. But,
this picture reminds me. She's got Blondie on her shirt that she wore for pretty much the whole movie, and you didn't play Call Me. Why?
Yeah, that would have been cool if they did that. But I know they in other movies they've done that before too, right? Where they play certain songs in trailers and they don't end up being in the movies. And I know there's one that I can I don't remember the exact, but I remember an instance where there was a movie that they did that, and I can't think of it at the moment. But I've seen
there's something on that.
Yeah. Were you gonna say, Adam? You gonna say something else? Sorry.
The other thing that this kind of reminds me that I did want to say, I think was a mistake, is that you have a film where the superhero doesn't wear their costume until like the last 5-10 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
She should have worn it, not necessarily throughout the whole film, and maybe for stretches. I understand that she didn't want to embrace. I get the message. He was saying that this is so people know that we're good, and she didn't want. She wasn't sure where she was, but I think there should have been more of her wearing the suit.
At least like towards the end, kind of have more where she kind of came to that realization.
That should be a little bit longer.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
She should have embraced it a little bit earlier in the a little more, and maybe at the end of the second act instead of the end of the third act.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, and going back to your point you made earlier. Yeah, I do agree. Like the execution could have been done better, but I do like and appreciate the fact that there is a contrast. And again, I came into this not knowing anything about her story from the comics or what this is based on, what this is referenced on. Again, I just came in fresh, and I actually like that take. It was just, again, comparing that Captain America to U.S. agent type of contrast there as well on the Marvel side. And so, it was just seeing her being more relatable to humans, although she's not human, but, to how certain humans that we may or may not know in our personal lives, or just may know of, kind of maybe are able to relate to how she's going through things and how she's taking care of this trauma, like you said, Adam, the trauma that she's going through and how she is. And so, I actually like that part of it, but I guess the execution could have been done a little better. And then, so the question I had for you both, and Adam in particular, because you're actually a good example of this. So do you think your overall outlook on the movie was lower because you went in with a certain expectation of this movie and how she's supposed to be portrayed and how you thought the story was going to go?
No, I mean, I knew going in that, how she was portrayed was going to be this way. Just because I read enough on it. I was just hoping the execution would be better. I see. I knew, like, they're not necessarily giving me the Supergirl I wanted, but all right, well, that's fine. I'll see where they go. And I'll tell you, I was not wowed by the trailers. I kind of felt like, I felt like, all right, I'm gonna get tickets because I love comic book movies. Other than Star Wars, my two favorite things, Star Wars and comic book films. And I love Superman, and that he's my favorite superhero. So I love that universe of the Superman side characters. But I felt I got tickets to go see in the theater as opposed to wait till streaming. Kind of out of obligation because like, well, I gotta know, you know, and you know, but I went in with an open mind because a lot of reviewers trashed Mandalorian and Grogu. I enjoyed it. I really had fun with that movie. So there's a lot of movies. I think I mentioned just on GeoStream last night. You know, I'm a huge Transformer, as you know, a huge Transformers fan collector, and you know, I'd seen all the movies, live action ones, except for until last week, except for The Last Night and Age of Extinction, because I let the Rotten Tomatoes score of like 18% or whatever low it is dissuade me from seeing it. I don't want to waste my time on that. And then I finally, like, you know what? I had nothing else to watch. I watched it last weekend. I was in a mood for it. And man, it's, you know, it's big, stupid Michael Bay, blow him up real good, fun. But damn, if I didn't have a good time watching it, and they're fun movies, and I had fun watching it. So from that perspective, I was hopeful, like, you know what? I'll have fun. Like, I'll you know, go in with an open mind, and, you know, the reviewers aren't always right. In this case, like I said, it's definitely not the worst film, as some people are saying, but it's mid.
Yeah. So, because you mentioned earlier that you didn't care for the approach that they did with this character. So you knew that going into the movie. Would you say you kind of already went in with like a bias, or did you not come to that decision until after you saw the movie?
I you know, I didn't, I mean, it's hard to say. I would have preferred another version of Supergirl, maybe more aligned with the 1984 film was not a very good film either. But you know, Helen Slater's portrayal was more of an upbeat, or actually like the CW show, or like how she was in Smallville, which I liked Smallville, and she was, you know, more of an upbeat portrayal of that, and I would have liked that take more.
Okay,
but I went in with the open mind, like, well, just because I wanted something a certain way doesn't mean I'm not. If it's something is well executed, you know, prove me wrong. So, and sometimes they prove me wrong.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's definitely fair. Yeah. But Gio, what about you? What are your take on that? And just like, did you have certain expectations going into this movie, or certain biases, or did you you have an open mind also?
No, as I mentioned before, her character, the way that they presented her in Superman, that towards the end of that film, I was expecting her to be this way. Coming into the movie, that wasn't really the issue for me. My main issue was the overall story and the script, and just how everything got going with the story itself. And I already talked about the villain, and just the way the technical stuff, you know, like the editing and stuff like that, it just kind of decreased the level of enjoyment for me for that movie. But no, I didn't have
Took
any
you out of it.
I wasn't expecting there wasn't a specific Supergirl that I wanted to see. I kind of figured that she was gonna be this way at the beginning, and then towards the end she'll, you know, okay, I'm gonna see things. I mean, that was expected, you know, that's predictable. So so that was like, just give me a cool story before we get to where we know she's gonna end up at the end of the movie. Just give me that. And then I mentioned that earlier, or yesterday on my show, this is what technically the second DCU movie under the James Gunn label. So to me, it's like the story and everything needs to be as elevated as good as it possibly can, because you know, they already kind of like I said before too, when it comes to the Snyderverse, that there's a lot of Snyderverse fans out there, that there definitely are, and then I like some of the Snyderverse movies, but the overall general audience didn't really love the Snyderverse that much, so much that they had to like cancel things and then start over. So it's like, let's not get to that level again. At least focus a little bit more with the storytelling aspect, or try to do as best as you can. I know it's hard to do a great movie. It's not easy to do, right? So, but I thought they would put a little bit more effort in a Supergirl, and then especially a Supergirl standalone movie that we haven't had in 40 years. So it just seemed like they just kind of like, let's just throw this in real quick, and that'll be the second one, and then that'll start building things up. But it's like, no, you need to lay the foundation a little stronger so that it keep building and building. And this was kind of weak, so it's already like a weak little brick in there, in there that's, you're trying to build this thing, and this is a very weak brick in there that is not it's not, I don't know, it may not work. So
yeah.
So,
Yeah, kind of going back to what Adam mentioned earlier, and kind of combining that with what you just said right now, Gio, is that Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were saying you were thinking that this should have been more of like a sequel, like this storyline, and they should have flipped it and made her more like kind of what you were thinking, like more lighthearted, and have this kind of be like the sequel. But I actually I prefer this way, how they did this, right? Because again, she doesn't see herself as a hero. She's kind of going through the struggle. And to Gio's point in that aspect is like, yeah, I mean, we've seen this before. It is kind of cliche where like, there's certain characters, superheroes who had to go through some sort of struggle to then find themselves and see their purpose. The one that came to mind is Thor, right? The first Thor movie where he was just arrogant, and he's royalty, and he had his Odin sent him to Earth to kind of what is it? What I keep blanking on the term, like humble him basically, and give him like some sort of purpose, right? And so at the end we see that transformation, and yeah, it's similar here. And the other movies have done that too. That's just the other one that popped in my head. So
yeah,
I feel like this was fine as a first start, right? This could be considered her origin story, right? Superman, I don't think I don't know, I can't recall if James Gunn said this or if this was the plan, but they didn't want that to be an origin story because a lot of people like Spider-Man, right, or Batman, we've seen that origin story so many times. But Wonder Woman, it's like Gio, what you said, it was 40 years since we've had a Wonder Woman, a Supergirl movie. And so yeah, I kind of see this more as like an origin story, and we had the flashbacks also of her life and coming up, and what happened again to her planet and her people, the other Kryptonians. And so and at the end we see, like we mentioned earlier, she puts on the suit and she's starting to become that quote unquote hero, her hero, right, her version. Because I didn't touch on this, but another thing I liked for the character that was consistent with her was that she that I thought that was somewhat touching, is she talked Ruthie from killing the villain Krem, right? She was about to, she wanted revenge, and she was there, she had the knife to his throat, and she was about to kill him, but Supergirl's like, no, don't do this, it's not worth it. She was, again, that's kind of her good-natured aspect, right? Trying to be the hero and trying to talking sense into helping somebody else, and like, don't do this. And then she just tells her to walk away. And then what does she do? She ends up going and stabbing Krem herself, which I thought was like, I didn't see that coming. Yeah, she killed him.
And didn't seem like it made any difference to her. She just did it, and like cold-blooded, like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's why that's consistent with her character, because up to that point, yeah, she just like, she was like she was doing like minimal to help people, right? She didn't really want to help Ruthie at first, but she just was tagging along anyways, and she didn't really care too much, right? She's just like, again, she knew who she was, and she wasn't trying to be Superman. She was just going through the motions. And part of me thinks she killed him for her, so that way Ruthie didn't have to live with that, like she was telling her, which I thought was to some degrees, like it was actually kind of somewhat I don't want to say respectable, but it was just, you can tell she was, she didn't want to put that burden on her, so she took it for her. And then also another part I was thinking is just like for her people, right? It's just her one outlet for her to kind of get her revenge, or just kind of get her anger out for herself. And she knew she wasn't going to be any better. So she's like, you know what? F it. I'm just going to do this. And so, I don't know. What were your guys' thoughts on that?
That was a mistake, and I'll tell you, that's a change from the graphic novel. So the graphic novel, she does, to convince Ruthie not to kill Krem. And what Supergirl does is she banishes Krem to the Phantom Zone. And to me, it undercut the lesson that she was trying to impart on her by by doing that. Yeah, I think that was I think they should have kept it like what the graphic novel had.
What about you, Gio?
Have her be banished
sorry,
to
go
the
ahead.
Phantom Zone.
Yeah.
But back to something you were saying, that this is the second film in the new DC universe.
Mhm.
I don't know if that was the right creative decision there. Like, and I thought this from the beginning. I think you build, what this shows me is that it's very hard to replicate what Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios have done. Certainly in those first three phases of the MCU. And they were, at the time when, they of course, Iron Man was the first film, but they already had the seeds there. Like, okay, maybe if something does well. They had the seeds of the Avengers with that post-credit scene of Nick Fury coming out at the end of Iron Man, said, I want to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative. And then I think that same year they had Tony Stark in a post-credit scene of the Incredible Hulk. So they didn't have access to X-Men. They didn't have access to Spider-Man because of the rights issues. So they went, look, okay, we got Iron Man, which at the time, not a big character. Obviously he's huge now, but that film and those films made him huge. But what they had was, okay, well, what's our next big ones? Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America. So they made those 4 films, and then they did the Avengers. Then they did Thor: The Dark World. Not a great film, but they stuck to their main ones. Iron Man 2, Winter Soldier, great film. Then they did Avengers: Age of Ultron. So they kind of did 2 Avengers sequels. They did sequels to those main films. Then after that, that's when they started, after Age of Ultron, that's when they started, let's try to do some more obscure things. Ant-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, Doctor Strange. So that's when they started to play around with it. Black Panther. But I think what they should have done is saved Supergirl for, this should have been maybe the 4th film or 5th film. And it should have been, obviously Superman. We know they're doing the Man of Tomorrow. Probably should have been another Batman film. Obvious, or Wonder Woman. I think that's, you get those are your big 3. I know they just did the Flash, so maybe they wanted to wait a few years, but they're doing this Lantern show. I think Green Lantern should have been, or the Green Lantern Corps, that should have been a movie. I just think those should have been your first 3. Then get into Supergirl.
Yeah, Gio, real quick, going back to her killing Krem, what were your thoughts on that?
I thought he needed to be taken out.
Yeah.
So I had no issue with that, but it was kind of funny that she was like I understand why she wasn't trying to have her do it, Ruthie do it. Like, I completely understand that. But it's just kind of funny that's like, or just walk away, and then she does it. Just like whatever, I'm gonna stab you now. And then you're done, basically. So I think I did kind of laugh a little bit in the theater when that happened. Even though I agreed with her doing it that way. Yeah. But it kind of, in a way, kind of contradicted what she was trying to do. Kind of like what you said, Adam. That it's like you're trying to show her, this is not the way, but I'm gonna do it.
The dude's a dirtbag. I mean, he deserves to die. It just, it's like, but you're making this whole point, like really, like over the course of her interaction in the film with Ruthie. Oh, you shouldn't do it. And then she just goes and does it. I'm like,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, I agree with the action of her doing it. Like, he needs to be taken out. But just the way that that scene was played out, it just kind of like contradicted each other. It's kind of like it just canceled each other out, basically.
No, I mean, to me it wasn't contradictory, because I think, again, she was still looking out for her because she knew. And I don't know if she experienced something like this in the past. Like, I don't think they really touched on that or how she had this knowledge, or it seemed like she was talking from experience when she told Ruthie this. But she's like, you don't want, he's going to be living with you forever, basically, if you kill him. And so it seemed like she was trying to help her and save her from having that guilt on her, telling, which we've seen in other movies too where somebody's tries to prevent someone from killing somebody else, saying, this is not going to make anything better. Basically, revenge doesn't help bring a loved one back or someone back, right? That's just kind of like we've seen that before in certain movies and certain plots. Like, don't do this; it's not worth it. It's not going to help anything. So, I get why. I personally understood that. I understood why she was doing it, but then she goes and kills him because again, because she doesn't need that for herself. Like, she doesn't she already knows she's kind of beyond like being like being like Clark, like Kal-El, right? So she has no problem doing it. And as you guys were mentioning that, one example made me think of in The Dark Knight. Just The Dark Knight. Remember at the end where the Joker gave each of the people on each of the boats a bomb?
Oh yeah.
And what is it? Tiny, the actor was like this, like Tiny Lister, I think, the guy, the big guy, one of the inmates. He was telling the guards, he was like, let me do it, because like, as in, give me the what is it? The remote, the detonator.
Detonator, yeah.
Because he's an inmate, right? He's a prisoner. He's done some bad stuff. He's like, you can say that I did it. And he was in that scene. Obviously, he didn't end up going through with it, but he was telling the cop, like, hey, you don't put that guilt on yourself. If you don't want to pull the trigger, give it to me. I'm a convict. I'm in prison, and I'll do it. And he ends up throwing it out the window. So he doesn't. That kind of contradicts this example. But my point being that his intention was. He knew what to say to the cop to give him the detonator, right? So that's the part of it that I was kind of relating to this.
Yeah.
Where she's like, she knows she's not a wholly good person, but she knows she doesn't want someone else to live with that guilt. So it's like, she knew she can take it, basically. I guess is what I'm trying to say. She knew she could take it if she killed him, but she didn't want to put that guilt on someone else who's not used to doing that. So that's why I didn't see it as contradictory for her. Like, she just didn't want. She was saving Ruthie from following through.
No, yeah, I get that. I going back to execution, it just came off weird doing it that way.
Oh, okay. You're just talking about like how her emotion, or what do you mean?
Yeah, it just seemed kind of like
I see.
whatever. Like, all right, we have this big moment. I just stopped her from doing this. That was going to affect her life or change her in a negative way moving forward with her life. And then she's just like, okay. Then she walks away, and then she just goes and just stab.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, she just, because she's not a good person, like Clark, right? So she had no problem doing that. That's what I was, getting at. That's why it just was easy for her to do.
Yeah, it's always like, I agree with all that, but yeah,
I think, it made perfect sense why she was trying to spare Ruthie from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But the execution, what they should have done is the movie should have ended. Listen, if you're going to go for it with a more of a, if not darker tone, then more ambivalent tone of Clark maybe finding out that she executed this guy. And he's not happy about that. And, or that she's lying to Clark. Maybe he doesn't find out, but somehow she lies to him. Everything's bad. And you can tell there's some darkness in her. It doesn't end that way. I think there's no consequences for that. And I think if you're gonna go for that, you got to have some sort of consequence for that emotionally, and that wasn't there.
I see. So you would have wanted her to have some remorse for killing him or something along those lines?
Remorse or coldness, or feeling like she needs to hide who she is from Clark.
Because as she was
Clark
killing him,
Clark sees her as his like kid cousin, and maybe a sweet kid, maybe got some sad and stuff, and she's a cold killer with superpowers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's what they should. Maybe she's not evil, but she's a cold killer with superpowers, and I think they should have really more emphasized that at the end, if that's how they wanted to go.
Do what I say, not what I do.
Yeah, I wouldn't say she's a cold killer, because again, she was. if she was a cold killer, right, she would just be killing everybody left and right. She felt justified in killing him, because as she was going up to stab him, he was saying, he's like, something along the lines of like, I will come after her again, or he was basically making it worse. And so he didn't think, I'm guessing he was calling her bluff and she was going to do it, but she just went and she stabbed him. And a part of, again, her trying to not really used to being a hero, there was moments in this where she was careless, right? They showed that, because she doesn't care, she doesn't think things through. She goes to that planet again with the two sons without having any knowledge or doing any kind of research or intel or anything. Not to say she's a secret agent or anything, but she just didn't care. She just went she went blindly to wherever Krem was. And yeah, and she got exposed to the Green Sun, and she was just out for a little bit, and then she just blindly attacks him head on, and he shoots her with the kryptonite darts. I mean, granted, she wouldn't have known he had those, but still, it's like, she just goes into these situations careless, not being used to the hero aspect. So I think that just more shows that she's just not that type of person, right? Again, that contrast between her and Clark.
See, I think if they would, like, there is that the parents, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think the daughter died too. Remember, there was the parents who owned that like cafe or bar.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
their
he killed the
daughter
daughter,
was taken by Krem for
Yep.
trafficking. And Krem ends up killing, I think he kills both the parents. Did he kill the daughter too? I'm trying to remember. I think he did.
He did, yeah.
So the Spider-Man films, like pretty much all of them, do a good job of portraying anguish in Peter Parker, that no matter what he does, and he does it for the best of intentions to help people get hurt, people die, and he's got such guilt over that. I would have liked to have seen that more with this.
Yeah,
that everything she does turns to crap.
Yeah,
but she wants the best of intentions, but nothing works out right for her.
Yeah, there was a moment in that where you kind of see I think she did see them, and it kind of affected her a little bit. But yeah, no, I agree. They should have leaned more into that. Kind of like you said earlier, Adam, just like or maybe it was Gio, like the execution overall, right? It's just like, yeah, I understand what they were going for as well, but yeah, I do agree that execution could have been better, and maybe that goes to some of the, like we were talking about earlier, there was some scenes that were maybe cut out that did show that more. If that was the case, for whatever reason, they decided to cut it, and I don't know. And then it adds to, again, going back, I agree with you guys. It kind of made it more shallow, right? There wasn't as much emotion in there as it could have been. But I do appreciate the attempt that they were going for, and just having it be something different for overall for her character. I wanted to go back to expectation too, because there was some follow-up points I had to that. So I had asked you guys about the expectation. So I think, and this kind of, again, this is like a general thought as well, that expectations can set us up, good or bad, right? They can lead us to kind of see the outcome of certain things in either a positive light or a negative light. And sometimes actually it can work out better if we kind of go in, for example, with lower expectations for some sort of movie, TV show, or whatever it is, whatever entertainment media that we're reviewing. If we go in with lower expectations, right, the bar can only be raised from there. So it helps in that sense. But on the other end, right, if we go in with certain expectations, expecting a character to be a certain way or a movie to be a certain way, or even if just in general, if a movie's getting a lot of hype, and I've seen that with people in our circles who go in and certain movies been so hyped, I want to imagine that they're expecting like the best thing in the world, and when they see it, it's like, oh man, this is not that great. Why is everybody saying this is great? So kind of similarly for this one, if people are going in and are expecting a lighthearted female version of Clark Kent, Kal-El from James Gunn's Superman, if they're already going with that mindset, then I feel like they're going to be disappointed. I think that's where a lot of disappointment comes from, and that's why I posed that question to you, Adam. But it seems like you were already aware of that, so maybe that didn't affect you too much. But just kind of, again, why I think it's always a slippery slope when you go in with expectations, because then you set yourself up for failure. if it doesn't meet those expectations, right? So as long as you go in and you're aware of that, but I feel like it takes away from whatever you're viewing entertainment media if you already go in with those high expectations, as opposed to kind of trying to be more or less neutral or open-minded. And and so I just, an observation that I just noticed, not just with this movie but in general, but I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know, you guys have anything to add to that?
When I saw Superman last year, and they did show Millie Alcock as Superman. I'm sorry, as Supergirl. Towards the end of Superman, I wasn't sure exactly how I was feeling about the character itself, but I knew that I wanted to see more of her, so I was interested. So I was like, okay, I can't wait to see what they have in store for this iteration of Supergirl. See how that's going to be.
Yeah.
And I thought Superman was solid. I wasn't blown away with it or anything like that, but I thought it was solid. So I was like, okay, well, maybe this is just, it could only maybe get better with the second film. And then we haven't seen, like I mentioned earlier, we haven't seen Supergirl, a standalone Supergirl movie in over 40 years. And we did see a little bit of Supergirl in The Flash, the completely different universe, but that was cool. Sasha Calle, she was great in that film. So I was curious, I was interested. When I did watch the trailer, it kind of did like, oh, okay, so maybe it's not gonna be great, maybe because of the trailer. But even so, it was like, hey, you never know, because trailers, like even like you mentioned, Adam, about Mandalorian and Grogu, my expectations were really low for Mandalorian and Grogu, and then when I actually watched it in the theater, I was like, yeah, I actually had fun with it. It was enjoyable. I wonder if my expectations were really high with Mandalorian and Grogu. I wonder if I would have been instead disappointed. So with this one, my expectation was kind of low coming in, and it still ended up being kind of underwhelming for me, even so. So that'll be my thoughts on that for this film.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, and it's always hard, right, to avoid getting super hyped up, and sometimes I got to keep myself in check as I temper my expectations, right, is the saying. And it is tough, but I think that definitely does weigh in on what our outcome of a certain movie or music or a certain art form in general, right? Like as far as like things we consume, TV shows, things like that, or indoor video games, right? Like I'm a gamer as well, and so I think that can definitely weigh in on maybe it could be without somebody being aware that that's the case. But like I said, it's just something I wanted to touch on. So the last thing I also wanted to touch on real quick was I know I've seen reports and I haven't looked up the numbers yet, and this is only this is opening weekend, right? So it's like Saturday again, the 27th, and so but I'm hearing early rumblings that it's not doing too well in the box office. And we've seen, I think both of you have mentioned when you went to go see your showings, there weren't that many people. Same with me when I went to go see an IMAX, there weren't that many people in there. So not up to a good start, but we'll see, right? And I do want to point out though that's not always an indicator. I don't know if people see this. Let me finish that sentence. It's not always an indicator of either failure or success. I guess you can say for sure, well, not for sure yet, but if it's not a box office success, the studios will call it a failure, right? But you look at Masters of the Universe, for instance, that didn't do too well from what I understand. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. At the box office either, I think it's a failure, financial flop as well, right? Because it didn't make the money. But if you look at the ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, both critics and the audience score, they're both above 50, right? So I guess technically on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience or the critics, it's fresh for them, and the audience had it at 75. But so overall, it's like somewhat enjoyable. I know still some people didn't like it, but it seems like a majority, or at least thought it was okay or / good, but it's still flopping, right? So
it's a fun, enjoyable film.
Yeah,
it had a heart.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I do agree. But again, that's just considered a flop by the studio. So I just kind of wanted to show those two examples there, like not necessarily, a flop to the studio could still be a success to an audience or the viewers there. So just something to kind of think about with that. But yeah, you guys got any thoughts on that or anything you want to add to that?
I mean, the economics of movie making is so wild.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the one thing I did read is that Supergirl has made $100 million in
Promotions.
promotional revenue, and you know, like having, I don't recall what, you know, but let's say having like a product placement of Diet Coke or, you know,
I see.
Apple computers or something.
Yeah.
So you know, those can, or if the actors film some scenes that are used for commercials, those they don't affect the box office, but in terms of the production, it goes to offset the cost of, let's say the movie cost $200 or $250 million to make. That's, you know, and plus these films like these are like another $100 million at least in promotion to market the film. Those impacts, plus they, you know, there's video on demand sales when it finally hits online, you know, for iTunes or Amazon. People want to download it. There's the Blu-ray sales. So, you know, these cables, you know, sales to cable, and I mean, this is going to go on HBO Max, but they oftentimes, it'll be on HBO Max, let's say for a year or something like that, and then they might license it out to Netflix for a few months, and Netflix pays something, or Paramount Plus. So the economics of how the studios, something that might be a box office flop may eventually end up at least breaking even or making a little bit of money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I just looked real quick. So the budget for this film ranges between like 170 and 186, you know, depending on what you account for. But yeah, somewhere million, 170 to 186 million, kind of give or take. So that's like within that ballpark. But yeah, what do you have any thoughts on that, Gio?
I mean, so far it's made 29 million worldwide, but that's including Thursday night and Friday.
Okay.
So Saturday numbers, obviously we don't have Saturday numbers or Sunday numbers, so it'll probably be around maybe 50 million North America box office, and then whatever international. But yeah, I mean, we see that all the time, that there's movies that suck, but they do very well box office wise. And vice versa, you know, the movies that don't do some of the Transform movies are made hundreds of millions of dollars, but they suck. So, and then there's some really great films out there, and they didn't even make like even $30 million. So you just can't always tell as far as like what's the quality of the movie.
Right.
I know when it was during you know, before streaming, like an example would be the first Austin Powers movie. It didn't actually open that well initially at the box office, but it did very well in VHS sales and rentals. And it did so well that then the studio, let's make a sequel. That's how we got to Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, and that did very well, and so forth. And now we all know Austin Powers, great success now. So, but we're not in that situation anymore. So, you know, I don't know how this is gonna ultimately do. I guess if you want to add the $100 million with the promotional money that they already got, and then probably like another $60-70 million that they'll make overall this weekend internationally, maybe it'll make its money back, maybe, but the reviews aren't good, so I don't know.
I mean, I think the era of comic book movies, no matter the quality, just coming out and making real bank is probably over. Doesn't mean the era of comic book movies is over. It just means the era of any comic book movie coming out and doing super well. But you know, it's like always quality over everything. And you know, for every Marvels, there's a Deadpool and Wolverine that makes a ton of money. And I mean, I'm sure. Well, I imagine Spider-Man, brand new day, has probably already made 100 million just in pre-sales.
Yeah,
you
probably.
know, and you know, you guarantee a Doomsday is gonna pass $1 billion no matter what, and I think Brand New Day will too. So if it's certain things, you know, are licensed to print money, and if they're quality, you know, and not necessarily always, you know, obviously like Master of the Universe is a good example. That's a really entertaining film, but I think you had a license of He-Man and those toys that they were from my era, you know, when I grew up in the 80s, and they've been around, you know, there's different iterations, but they never have been quite as successful as they were in the 80s. And I think there's just a lot of kids today who just like, who's this?
Right.
You know, and unless their dad is into it or something, they're not necessarily be into it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what was going on too. It isn't appeal
as opposed
to a wider audience.
Yeah, as opposed to Transformers. Transformers is a franchise that has been very successful in reinventing itself. You know, you have the 84 through 88, you know, 80s, the original G1 Transformers, but then like because of the Michael Bay, and then you had the Beast Wars, and you had like iterations of those cartoons, and then you have, of course, the Michael Bay movies and the you know, the most recent films. So there's multi generations of fans of Transformers. Yeah, and it just wasn't that true with Masters of the Universe. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, and real quick, I would let me switch over here. I got the Rotten Tomatoes tab or page on this movie here. So currently 76% with the audience and 56% with the critics. And like I was telling you, Gio, in the chats, this is probably more or less, like I said earlier in the stream, where my score, if I were to give it one, would kind of be in like in the 70 range. And so I wouldn't say this is a bad movie, like by, you know, per the audience, right? That's where usually my thoughts align, is more with the audience and the critics. I kind of rarely, if ever, agree with the critics score. So I mean, I think that's still okay / good grade, right? It's not horrible. Yeah. So I don't know, I guess we'll see. What's that?
It's a passing grade. If you gotten this as your homework assignment, 76%.
Exactly, it's a C. Yeah, it's a C.
So I used to call it the gentleman's C when I was in school.
Yeah, right. Because you gave it a B-, right? So it's
I did give it a B-.
It's actually more or less kind of along that same range. I think B- would be like a low 80s.
Yep, right? Like 80.
Yeah, like an 80.
Yeah,
80
like
exactly
80.
On the dot. Yeah. Bam. Yeah, so it's close to that. So I think that's okay / good, right, for that range.
All right, it's okay.
Yeah,
not terrible.
It's not terrible exactly. Yeah,
I give it a 5 out of 10, but that's mine has to go to summer school.
That's an F.
That's an F. Yep, that's an F. Do it again. Take the class again.
But Feezy, my daughter, agrees with you. She gave it a 7.5 out of.
Did she? Okay,
10.
yeah, she's.
Yeah,
in this group here, I guess the majority, I guess you can say. But any other closing final thoughts on Supergirl? If not, gentlemen, we are good. Let me go ahead and remove this. Thank you both for taking the time. Again, as usual, I know it's a little longer than anticipated. It's not 2 hours yet, so good. That's getting better. But no, thank you both for spending the Saturday evening with me talking this film on short notice as well. I know like I said, I saw it earlier today, and I messaged you guys like, hey, are you guys available to do this? And so appreciate you, one, for both being willing to do that and spending some of your time discussing this. And thank you to all who took the time to watch all of this, right? So all hour and 40 minutes ish of this. We'll go around the clock here. Anything you guys want to plug or shout out? Adam, we'll start with you.
Nothing upcoming other than, you know, be back on Gio's show, Movie Canon, next Friday night. And, you know, thinking about, they just released another topic, that in-art Superman figure. So I have the Hot Toys one, but I am thinking about it. I don't know. We'll see.
You're getting it.
And Feezy, thanks for having me, and always great talking films and figures and cool stuff with you.
Yeah, man. No, thank you again for joining in. And like to what Adam was mentioning, if you're not familiar with us, we got to know each other through the collecting community. So you see all these collectibles behind us. So a lot of our content is also revolves around collectibles. I do have another channel, but I'll plug that here in a second. But Gio, the Movie Canon, anything you want to shout out or plug?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you, Feezy, for inviting me for another That One Movie
Yes,
episode.
sir.
So appreciate that, Adam. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Great discussion as always, Feezy. As far as my channel and things that I do on the channel. So as Adam mentioned, Figures Talk that I do Friday nights, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time on the Movie Canon YouTube channel. Adam's usually there. Feezy's usually there as well. About six scale community figures and collecting and now I talk about some movie news. I try to add a little, at least one piece of movie news,
Yeah.
the Met Report segment, as I call, because I don't really do that stream as often. So I let to add it in there because it's kind of connected to everything else that we like. So, and then I'm doing the Arnold Schwarzenegger filmography tier list coming up
Nice.
soon. So that'll be on my channel as well. But yeah, I think that's it for now. But again, Feezy, thank you, and Adam, thank you for just a good time with you guys.
Always a
Yeah,
pleasure.
man. Yes, sir. Yes, gentlemen. Yeah, like Gio mentioned, you can find me on Figures Talk with him and Adam when he's able to make it, and others on Friday nights. So I'll put the link in the description below to both these gentlemen's social medias and their YouTube channels. So go out and check those out and show them some love if you like what they do. I'm sure they would very much appreciate that, as well as my content. Also, if you like what you're seeing, you got any type of entertainment, enjoyment from this, don't forget to hit that like button. That'd be very much appreciated. And then, like I mentioned, I do have another channel, Feezy's Figures, right? That's my collectible focus channel. So I have a lot of videos and live streams and content on there that focuses around 6 scale, some on other scales. Yeah, it's just like different topics and things like that, kind of similar to this, right? Just different topics related to entertainment media. So that one focuses more on collectibles and things related to that. So if you're interested, that link is in the description below as well. You can check out that channel as well as my other accounts for that. But other than that, thank you all again for watching. Thank you all for the great discussion. Let us know your thoughts here in the comments. And yeah, as of course, as always, we all have our own opinions, right? Art is subjective. So this is just our thoughts. But thank you for hearing us out. And with that, we'll catch you on the next one. We'll see you all at the movies. Later, all. Take care.
Good night.
See you guys.